Hello, welcome to the 41st episode of the Open Waters podcast. 4-1. Excellent. Welcome back.
Cool. Welcome back.
How you doing?
Good.
Missed you in the last one. We had a
oh my
fantastic
gosh, it was
episode.
fire. If you haven't listened to it, I highly recommend you go and listen because it was incredible.
She's trying.
I walked away with some major hit you on the top of your head moments.
If you didn't catch it though, we did have two special guests, Manuel Rodriguez of the Worshiping Musician Workshops and Summits. He's a part of the Worshiping Musician School here in Utah. He does a bunch of different events, and he's got one coming up on April 6th, I believe, is the next workshop for the Worshiping Musician School. And we also have Lester Herrera. It's Herrera, A-R-A-R-A.
It's H-E.
No, it's not.
Good. Yes, it is.
Is it?
Yeah,
Have I been spelling it wrong?
I think so.
That's fine. I gotta go change that. Anyway, now that I know, I will go change that. Anyway, so yeah, he is a talented sound engineer that does sound for New Creation Church. He's awesome. His learning curve has been, he's just learned stuff at an exponential rate.
Yeah,
I truly believe it's a divine learning.
Oh yeah,
he's been
100%.
given. So,
it's been amazing.
yeah, he's an awesome guy to be also. So, just to put that out there.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
that was fire. I really enjoyed that.
It was a great episode.
Yeah.
Anyway,
So
give us the Mo About Us section real quick.
Yeah, the more Mo about us. So my question to you is, Josiah, and you
Sure.
probably have more opinions about this because you're a software dude. So
Sure, brother.
brother.
Sure, bro.
So
Cuh.
are you a Mac person or a Windows person?
Mac or Windows? I'm a Windows guy.
Okay.
I use Samsung phones. I'm a Windows computer guy. I can't get on the Apple train. It's just
The Apple train.
I just don't like it. I mean, I'm not gonna lie. When it comes to the like the privacy and stuff, companies are companies. They're gonna take your information wherever they can. So it's not like one's just better than the other morally. But I just like Windows and Samsung more.
Yeah. I think I feel like people who are Mac people love their Macs.
Yeah.
So they're the better one.
True.
But I have never used a Mac except for if I have a friend or somebody who lets me use one. And so I really don't have good knowledge about it.
If you have a Apple phone, you'll enjoy your Mac because they're very
compatible?
very work together. Like
Okay.
you get one, you can pretty much do things on one with the other device
Okay.
because they're connected. Just like they work together very well. They're very synergistic.
Cool.
So synergistic.
Yay. So I'm a Windows person
Sure.
just because of user friendliness and what I've always done. But okay, I want to make sure before we move any further that we talk about our next Open Waters. So as
Yes.
everybody should know by now, we've moved to a first Sunday of the month Open Waters
Yes.
in-person get together, and we're going to start doing outreaches.
Yep.
Different areas. We'll have more information on that to come. But this next one that we're doing on the 7th of April, we are usually we have it at our house, but we're going to actually have this one up north where you did actually a live recording.
Did it live, but it
Yeah.
was
a
cut
few
short
Sunday-
because of
January.
because of internet. Yes, but yes, it was in January. We had the last one. It was live. And then this one coming up in April, we will have in the Camus church that we're going to be a part of for that week.
Do you know what the name of the church is by chance?
I don't off the top of my head. I don't.
Okay.
I don't think they actually have like a name for the
Okay.
church because it's like a.
And you don't have the address right now yet?
I do have the address, so I
Oh.
can put it in the description.
Okay, we'll put it in the description, so look for that if you're interested in coming out. We would love to have you. Also, we're going to try to work out a caravan for people to ride up together
Yep.
since if you live in the Salt Lake area and would like to go. So just
Exactly.
fun
So-
facts for you as we move.
Yeah.
Get ready to go into our topic and dive in today.
Yes. And if you would like to watch us online, we'll have live stream up and running and should be ready to go.
Yeah.
So. Yeah.
And if you've been curious about what we look like, you've heard our voices for a while. We are on YouTube, Open Waters Worship. If you have anything that you want to comment, you can email us at openwaterworship@gmail.com.
Yep.
And we're on Instagram under Open Waters Worship. So we'd love to interact with you.
Yes.
Okay, Josiah, what's our topic for today?
What is our topic? What is it?
You.
It's intentionality in worship.
Okay. Intentionality and worship.
Intentionality in worship.
All
And
right.
kind of to lead it off, I just want to give like a precursor to everything else that's going to be said, and that's just our life is worship. We're supposed to live our lives in a way that represents who God is and glorify God with our lives. And worship isn't just like, it's not for our glory. It's not to make us look righteous or anything like that. It's literally just to exalt and glorify Jesus. And so when it becomes about us, we should pause and ask ourselves if we're really worshiping, because we're most likely coming from a different place. But
Good.
I personally want to get to a place where I'm worshiping out of a place of just wanting to exalt God with my life. So
Yeah.
anyway.
I think the reason why I was wanting to dive into this topic too is because I was listening actually to the last podcast they did with Manuel and Les, and I was just really again stirred to something that I've really already been pushing into. We've had a few podcasts about this, but just the intimacy with God and really about the quiet time and the secret place being the main focus. Like not like it's a job, but just making such with intentionality, making that time as important, just as important as say going to a job or something where you're required to be there. And it's not because we are required to be there, it's because we want to be there, but still, it's that it's that idea of and treating it with that much importance. And it's because when you love somebody, you go the extra mile and you make it the priority. So just like I was talking to you before, I have my hands are in a lot of different pots, but in my heart, the level of priority of this time with you as my son and what we're doing together is one of the very top priorities. My family, all that takes precedence over any other thing. It's the same thing in a different way with the Lord. Mm-hmm. And so I was even thinking just like because you guys had said something about there's so many things that you said in there about not worshiping for the emotions, but worshiping to exalt him. Just a check for me to remember that it's about him. And we've had podcasts on that too, but also just, it's not about the song that you're singing. Was that what it was? Or the song
it's not about, well, I think something that me or Manuel said, I mean, even less, I think we all probably touched on it at some point, but it's not about the song that we sing. It's not if we're playing like the most famous song or if it's by like Bethel Music or it's by Elevation Worship. It doesn't matter if it's like our favorite song on the playlist or it just, are we glorifying God with it, or are we playing the song to play the song?
Yeah.
And so
when you had said some of that, I just really was like, it really doesn't matter what songs we choose. It really doesn't matter what the program is at the church. It really doesn't matter what the outreach is, or even I was telling you, it doesn't matter. Like if let's say we were going to decide to go sing at an arena somewhere which we like to do, the open waters of the park. We've done that. We want to do it again. Or if we just were like, we're going to plan to sing on our outside deck. It's not about the actual end product. It's about that time that you spend with Jesus and that time you spend with God, the journey to getting. It's not the outcome. It's the journey with him to the outcome. I don't think it's not that he doesn't care. I just think he cares less about that than he does about the actual process of you and him getting to that.
Well, if you think about it, it's, if you think about God and with the Israelites through the whole desert of like the 40 years, it wasn't even that. It was supposed to be like, I forget what it says, like 2 weeks or like 2 to 4 weeks of journey.
Yeah.
Was it from Egypt to the promised land? Instead, they spent 40 years, but God was literally led them by a cloud by day and a fire by night. And it's just like, he wanted to be there for the journey with them. And he did it in the most obvious way that they knew that God was with them.
Yeah.
But instead of, going on a journey with him, they decided to make it about themselves and to not be on the journey with it. They made it about the destination, which is about the promised land. And God killed off all the ones that made it about the promised land and not about him.
Yeah.
So,
and I just think about even...
That was extreme, but...
Yeah. This applies to worship, but it's not just to worship. I feel even, Dan, your stepdad, is working through a major transition in his career. And I just have been he's looking at a whole new avenue, and he really feels like this is where the Lord wants him to go. And that's good. And of course, if the Lord is saying, do this, we want to obey and do this. And I also believe that it's probably more about his journey with God in this time and in this season of his life than it is about what he does for a living. It matters, but I don't think it matters as much as the journey to get there with God and taking him by the hand and making this decision together. That matters more than, because if he goes back to doing what he's always done, I think the Lord is fine with that. And I think the Lord is excited to do a new endeavor with him. But I think the thing that's most important is that he connects with God through it all. And that it's more about the intentionality in worshiping it with his life and worshiping God, whether that's in what we would consider a traditional worship type environment or just in life and everything.
100%. There's just an intentionality that needs to be there where we gotta stop focusing on the goal more than we focus on who we're going to the goal with, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
It's almost a cliche now, but like in movies, well, at least in movies that came out a while ago, it would be about the people that we met along the way, the friends that we made along the way type of deal, where it's like that was the treasure, you know. And it's kind of like the cliche was there because it was kind of true, God wants to be the person, the treasure that we got.
Right.
But he was the one that we got to do it with and then get to this goal. The goal should not be greater than the God who created the goal, you know what I'm saying? And so it's like, it's just, 100%.
So you were talking about, one of the points was, I think we kind of already said time with God to figure out the goal. That's essentially what we're saying is the actual target.
Well, yeah, but so that's more of a precursor before you even figure out, like, for like people that have, maybe you don't know where you're going in life yet. Like Dan had to get a really serious talk with himself and God and like, where do you want me to go?
Right.
And it's like it's not like, oh, I get to go this way, I have got a goal already. It's like, no, I got to sit down with God and see what he would like and what I would like. 'Cause God does take what we would like to do into account. Definitely, 100%.
And even if God said, if he's feeling like God is saying do this, but Dan, not in direct disobedience, so just hear me out on that, but I feel like it's more about him connecting with God and intentionality and laying his life down and worshiping the Lord than it is about what he actually does.
Say it again.
I think this whole thing that, like you brought it up, is more about, I think, whether he's going to go to work in the traditional job that he did, or if he ends up doing this new thing. I think it's just, don't do it apart from connecting and worshiping God and being intentional.
I think sometimes it can be that way, but like I think a lot of the time, when God tells you to do something, it's just, and this is something that I think everybody passes up on, is a lot of the time we do default to our feelings, and I think that's where the intentionality part comes. Is if we're going to be intentional, we're going to do what the Lord wants us to do as well.
Sure. Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely. And I did give a disclaimer that there are times when there are things that are sinful, there are things that are direct disobedience, there are things that are done out of fear, but I think it's still more about our intentions
100%.
To honor God and to worship him.
Yeah. The intention, God sees the heart. He's not a respecter of people's, and he sees the motive of everybody.
Right.
And so, 100%. If he sees that your motive is, who you are, I'm not the judge, so I can't really tell what he's going to do, but,
sure.
It's just,
yeah.
And so there is
what was the next?
But that was a precursor, is setting the goal with God and making that time valuable.
I see what you're saying.
It's intentionality there with the time with God,
Yeah.
Because...
So let me clarify. One, what I was speaking to was it's more about the journey with Jesus than the outcome or the end. Mm-hmm. And then what you're saying is an intentionality.
The planning.
Is, yes, you do have to have that goal of being with God. That should be your goal. Yeah.
As humans, I think we tend to be more goal oriented, and I think myself included, I think whatever area of life, maybe it's the area of character God's trying to grow me in, which right now is discipline. It's just like, I should just be disciplined already, And it's almost like a self-righteousness, and that's another area I need to work on is, like being like,
All these areas to
yeah,
work on.
so many, and I should just be at the end goal already.
Yeah.
But it's, as humans, we see the end goal and we're just like, okay, that's what we go to, and then we're done. It's just like, no, we're here with God, the creator of all things. Why do we have our magnifying glass on the goal rather than on the person who is getting us to the goal with him?
Right.
The next part was kind of more on my heart, and that is, in part of intentionality is, I think a lot of the time when something's intentional, we're not going to get bored of it, or we're not going to make it a task or something that it's like, oh, we have to do. You know what I'm saying? If it's intentional, it's something that we get to do. More or less, I think people can put in the excuse, no, I don't want to do work, but I have to do work. But I have to be intentional about it. You know what I'm saying? Because if I don't work, I don't get paid, and I don't. But it's just like, you got to realize that not everybody gets the opportunity to make the money that you do. Not everybody has the ability to go and earn money to make food, put food on the table for your family and yourself. And so, but anyway, and it's just this, we've kind of been touching on it for the last 2 episodes. It's just the boredom in church. And when we make time with God intentional, we're intentional worship. It's just like, it's going to take that boredom out because we're actually putting effort into worship. Because we're going to be like, okay, Lord, how do I worship you to the best of my ability? And I think as humans, we're problem solvers, and we like to make things better or as best they can be. At least that's how God gave us. That's the ordained. But we were ordained to do that from the beginning of time. God put Adam into the garden. He started naming things and putting things into order with the animals. And so it's like, we're called to make things as best we can. And it's the same thing with worship. When we make worship intentional, we're going to worship him the best that we can, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does.
And with that, it's just like I've been about to say, at least, is the boredom in church is something that's been plaguing, I think, a lot of churches and a lot of different bodies of Christ. And it's killing our intentionality in worship, not just in church, but outside of church as well, living a life of intentionality and intentional worship. And it's just when you're in church specifically, getting out of that audience mindset. I wrote down some notes, that's why I'm looking down. But pretty much, I feel like a lot of the audiences in church, or like the congregations in churches, look up to the band and they just like, okay, we're going to let them worship and we're just going to sit here and sing the song with them, but we're not actually going to mean the words that we sing. We're not actually going to, ponder what we're actually speaking out, which is important to ponder what you speak, because your tongue, there's power in the tongue. So it's making sure that you are speaking the words that align with what God has for your life, align with his word too. So you're not speaking death over anybody or anything.
Yeah.
But yeah, any thoughts on just getting people out of the audience mindset? Because it's...
Yeah, no, I mean, thinking of how to be, so we've talked about being intentional in our lives, just to connect with him and worship in whatever sphere in life. We've talked about making it a goal to practically sit down with him and have that quiet time and be intentional, aware that he lives inside of us. And so now we're talking about being intentional in actual traditional type of worship setting.
Yeah.
And I think ways to foster that, I obviously feel like leading by example is the best way to lead others to... am I on target? Yeah. No, I'm not.
No, keep going.
You can tell me.
Keep going. I'm listening.
Okay. That by me as another worshiper, I can help in my intentionality in worship when I'm not on the stage, or whatever, just by really truly having him as the focus and the goal, and being activated and just focused, and that kind of a thing is going to go a long way to essentially almost discipling and fostering and creating an atmosphere for worship and just being, intentional. I also prepare myself beforehand as in a leadership capacity, or even before I go to church, if I'm not in a leadership by the traditional sense of the word on the team or whatever, I really try to focus and be intentional in preparing my heart to be focused on Him when I'm getting ready to go into a worship environment.
I think it's important to ask yourself the question. Lester said that Pastor Jeremy asked him a question. He's like, "Why do you come to church?" It's like, that's a great question, because it's like, if you don't know why you're going to church, it's probably because you don't really care why you're at church. You're just checking off a box.
Yeah.
And I think it's important for people that truly want to dive deep with God. Ask yourself the question, why do you go to church? And I'm not saying this like out of a place like, I don't want you in my church
Right.
if you don't want to be, or if you're just checking off a box. I think there's going to be benefit either way, because your spirit's going to receive things that you may not
Seeds are getting
mentally.
planted.
But I think it's also important to ask the question, are you there because you're being intentional, or are you there because it's a habit that you have and you don't know why you're there? You know, it's like...
Is it the religious thing to do?
Exactly. And I don't want my religiosity, is that a word? I don't know. Probably not. But I don't want
religiosity.
I just don't want to be religious about it. I don't want to be doing it out of habit. I just want to be doing it because I'm intentionally going to church to worship God, because He's worthy of all praise.
Yeah.
And I want to be intentional with how I worship Him when I'm at the church, because I want to give Him the praise to the best of my ability. I want to be intentional when I'm at home to get into the presence, so that when I go to church, I'm not just being a sponge to worship and the anointing and all that stuff. I'm not there to receive, but I'm there to outpour. You know what I'm saying? Is when we gather together, it's not, I mean, we're there to receive it. We're also there to as a body of Christ, get together and just pour out our praise.
Yeah.
And so I think it's important to really know why. And I think another word we could use, a couple words we could use for intentionality, is just knowing why. And just asking yourself, why do I do this? You know, why do I live? Why do I ask God what He wants to do? Why do I ask God, you know, what the goal is? You know, why do I do this? And intentionality is just a curiosity on why you're doing things, and it's having the answer to that.
I really like that, Josiah.
So,
yeah, I think that's another thing that was sparked in me the last podcast, was just, I really wanted to ask myself, am I singing this song or loving this song? And it's okay for me to be attracted to certain songs, and just like anything else. But am I doing it because it feels good to me, or am I doing it because, wow, I'm just truly worshiping Him? And of course, it's going to feel good when I worship Him. So it's very similar, but it's just a kind of a slight twist in the heart.
There's also a lot of stuff that's just like, are people like doing this? Are they dancing because they like to dance? Or are they doing it because that's what God's telling them to do? Are they being intentional with being with God every step of the way like that? And or are they just doing it because they want to be seen? And are they intentionally trying to be seen? Are they intentionally trying to be like in the spotlight, if that makes sense? Are they on the band because they are intentionally trying to get to a place of leadership? Are they intentionally being an usher to be the first contact with people to do whatever? It doesn't matter. It's just like there's an intentionality behind everything, and it's just like when we're living a life of intentional worship, we're supposed to just intentionally seek God in everything.
Yeah.
So in everything 100%. That we do. So
Yep. I don't even think I can say anything better than that. I don't know. I think that's that's where your heart's at, and that's really what's coming out of you, Josiah, in so many levels. It's just you're exuding that
that's what we
truth
want.
And that desire around people. And I think we could have just started the podcast with that.
We should have.
That's the bam.
We got to it eventually.
That's the mic drop. Boom.
Yeah, we just wanted to live a life of worship to God, and this is for everybody, not just people that play instruments, not just people that do flags, paint, or anything like that. It's for people that may not seemingly do anything, but they are still called to do the same thing and to live a life of intentional worship. So
yeah, that's another thing. Like, I think it's both a beautiful thing, and I think it can be taken to an extreme. Like when we went to Fresh Start, their worship is so exuberant, and you physically get tired. And I remember the last time they were there, they were just pushed through the tiredness. And I have worked hard not to be a striver person, and to not strive and to do things in my flesh. So, but there's extremes to everything. So I think when we're being intentional to worship, that means sometimes we're going to keep worshiping even when we're tired.
Yeah.
And sometimes, like we talked about on the way here, it may not look like I'm being intentional when I sit down and just lay back in his presence, but it's all about my heart is intentional.